Far from home in one of the world's most isolated and secretive countries, someone 100 North Korean soldiers find themselves in Europe's largest combat center since the Second World War. Little was known about the North Korean troops deployed to the KSK Oblast to support Russia in its devastating years-long war in Ukraine. Initially, it was not even known what exactly these troops would be ordered to do. Moreover, their presence was not even officially recognized by Moscow and Pyongyang. The Moscow regime distributed fake military cards to North Korean soldiers with the credentials of citizens from Russia's autonomous regions. North Korean soldiers also tried to camouflage themselves in Russian military uniforms. In this way, the North Korean soldiers were to appear as if they were from the autonomous republics of Russia. But Ukrainian intelligence uncovered this scandal. Now, the North Koreans were a clear target. The North Korean troops were overwhelmed by the Ukrainian army's long-range missiles, drones, and mortars. Seoul claims that at least 1,000 North Korean soldiers have been neutralized or seriously wounded by Ukrainian forces, while Kyiv leader Volodymyr Zelensky claims that his defenders have eliminated or wounded around 3,000 North Koreans to date. Both figures are huge casualty rates for Russia and North Korea. Now, we will go to the K-Oblast to further clarify the situation and take a closer look at how many North Korean soldiers have been neutralized in the war, how many have been wounded, and how many are being treated in hospitals in the city. A week ago, the South Korean spy agency claimed that at least 100 North Korean soldiers had died since they were deployed to the front line in KSK in December. Now, these casualties are up to 3,000, as we mentioned, so Kim Jong-un's men are becoming cannon fodder in the Russian forests. Despite being one of the largest standing armies in the world, North Korean soldiers lack battlefield expertise, as the dictatorial regime has not fought a war in years. Combat drills cannot get military units ready for real action, and Russia has failed to provide its new recruits in Pyongyang with proper, meaningful training before deployment. The language barrier between Russian and North Korean soldiers also complicates the situation in KSK. All of these factors are likely to confirm the casualty figures provided by Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky. Ukrainian intelligence reports also indicate that a large number of North Korean soldiers have already flooded hospitals in the KSK Oblast. Hundreds of wounded North Korean soldiers are recovering in the Oblast medical centers and preparing to rejoin the front line. However, there are also reports that some of the soldiers are in critical condition. Russian military officials have denied these reports, but concrete evidence of the North Koreans' condition has come to light. Ukrainian security forces intercepted a phone call between a nurse at a hospital in the Moscow region and her husband, who was fighting against Ukraine in the Kyiv region. In the intercepted conversation, the Russian woman said that in just a few days, more than 200 wounded North Korean soldiers had been taken to a Russian hospital near Moscow. In the conversation that followed, the Russian woman complained that the North Korean wounded were kept in better conditions than the Russian soldiers. According to her, the medics were unable to communicate with the wounded North Korean soldiers due to the language barrier. They were also forbidden to communicate with the soldiers in English. These striking details revealed in the phone call proved that the North Korean soldiers were actually in hell in KSK and were sent to Moscow for treatment. Retired Lieutenant General Chun In-bum, a veteran of the South Korean Army, had announced that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un would send the best of an elite force of highly trained and brainwashed soldiers known as the Storm Corps. But as you may recall, the Ukrainians wiped out this Special Storm Corps from the KSK front. The 11th Corps suffered more than 1,000 casualties after the most recent offensive by Ukrainian forces. Some are special forces such as the U.S. Navy SEALs or Rangers or Britain's SAS. Others are light infantry and snipers. Experts consider the Storm Corps, the 11th Army Corps of the North Korean Army, to be better trained, better physically fit, and better motivated than the average North Korean soldier. but this did not save them from the real battlefield at KSK. Drones transformed the battlefield in Ukraine, bringing new levels of surveillance and destruction of military targets as well as civilians and urban infrastructure. UAVs have also become a nightmare for North Korean soldiers. The vast majority of North Korean soldiers eliminated have been the target of accurate drone strikes. Command and communication problems prevented North Korean soldiers from knowing how to respond to the impending danger. The North Koreans, who knew around 100 basic military terms such as fire and position, were often only able to witness a few seconds of Ukrainian drones before they crashed. The situations once again emphasize how important training is on the front lines of war. According to the US State Department, the training North Korean soldiers receive in Russia covers basic infantry operations such as the use of artillery, the use of drones, and trench clearance. These are critical skills for frontline operations, but due to insufficient training time, North Korean soldiers do not normally benefit from the lessons they receive on the battlefront. After heavy casualties, it is not yet clear whether the poorly trained North Korean soldiers will dig trenches, hold positions, or actually fight on the front line. The Pyongyang regime is even talking about putting more inexperienced North Korean soldiers at Russia's disposal in the future, despite the record number of casualties at KSK. Although Pyongyang does not have a problem in terms of military resources, it is pursuing the same strategy as Russia in terms of the incompetence of its military personnel. In order to understand this situation more clearly, we will need to look at the internal military structure of the North Korean army in more detail. In this way, we can get a close estimate of how many more soldiers Pyongyang will send to Russia in the future. According to the CIA World Factbook, North Korea is one of the most militarized countries in the world, with around 1.2 million armed forces personnel, and all citizens must complete compulsory military service from the age of 17. For men, this is usually 10 years, but recent assessments suggest that North Korea has shortened it by half. In addition to the length of military service, deserters share critical information about what is really important. Kim Sang-han, a defector living in the South, remembers his 12 years in the North Korean army as 12 years of insufficient food, mistreatment, and sleepless winter marches. Kim Sang-han joined the army in 1989 as a soldier in the city of Kong, near the border with South Korea, and served during North Korea's famine in the 1990s, which killed up to 1 million people. Kim, who requested to use a pseudonym for security reasons, said that before 1991, they could still eat meat, but from that year onwards, it began to run out. According to Kim, the rice ration was reduced from 800 grams per meal to 800 grams per day, and eventually they were given only corn flour without rice. Kim Sang-han also said that there were frequent accidents during training, such as firing errors, soldiers accidentally detonating grenades, and other weapons accidents. According to him, an example of their training could be a winter march. Kim said that they walked 150 km without sleeping for 3 days, and that this system still continues relentlessly. He added that it was a positive development that the barracks had heating and 24-hour electricity, unlike the homes of most North Koreans. Kim Sang-han defected to South Korea in 2017. Although Kim's military experience in North Korea ended more than 2 decades ago, such statements offer insight into a world that outsiders rarely understand. The internal structure of the North Korean military remains the same. Pyongyang still does not provide adequate facilities for its soldiers. In 2017, a soldier who was shot repeatedly as he fled south to escape the heavily guarded demilitarized zone was found to have parasitic worms and a chronic liver infection. Some of the parasites removed were 27 cm long, according to South Korean doctors who treated him. One type of worm they found usually affected dogs. At the time, Kang Ri-hyuk, another North Korean defector and former army officer, admitted that everyone was hungry and that they slept in filthy conditions. Kang Ryuk also spoke of soldiers who died of disease because they did not receive medical treatment. There are also reports that North Korean soldiers are stealing food from rural villages and farms. North Korea has a long history of severe food shortages and famine. The United Nations World Food Program says that more than 40% of the population is malnourished. It is worth noting that some North Korean military units are well supplied and have regular food and logistic supplies. These soldiers have more food than the average North Korean citizen, but the number of soldiers who enjoy such conditions is so small that it barely exceeds the number of top figures in the Pyongyang regime. So what are the implications of both the heavy casualties at KSK and the reappearance of North Korean soldiers on the front lines of war in conditions as harsh as those at home? Such incidents on the battlefront have intensified Pyongyang's approach to the desertion of its troops. Fears of future Ukrainian strikes with ATAC EMS and Storm Shadow missiles are predicted to lead to mass desertions among more than 1,000 North Korean soldiers, including 500 officers and 3 generals. Currently, the majority of these soldiers are in KSK Oblast, with some in Belgorod. A certain number are stationed near the northeastern lines of Ukraine's border with Russia. Most of these North Korean soldiers probably don't want to die for the invasion dreams of another country's president. Kim Jong-un, on the other hand, plans to mobilize another 1,000 North Korean troops as part of the military technology he will receive from Russia. This is really a big dilemma. If Kim Jong-un does this, if he puts many more North Korean soldiers under Putin's command and sends them to the war fronts, the situation could become much worse. The Ukrainians will probably not hesitate to use their stockpile of ATACMS and Storm Shadows to hunt down these soldiers and to airlift their UAV inventory. One mistake, and they may never open their eyes again. Especially on the front lines of the war between Ukraine and Russia, there is no room for error. Without any combat experience, North Korean soldiers are far more likely to make such mistakes than Russian forces. The Ukrainian side is ready to give Pyongyang's troops a chance at redemption. Ukraine's I Want to Live project has released a new video in Korean calling on North Korean soldiers to surrender to Ukrainian forces when they are deployed to conflict zones. The video, which features Ukrainian prisoner of war camps, says that upon surrender, North Korean soldiers will be held in accordance with the Geneva Conventions, and the Ukrainian side will guarantee safe detention, food, and medical care. No matter how many troops the Pyongyang regime sends to help Russia, no matter where the target is, Ukrainian POW camps are ready to receive soldiers of all nationalities, religions, and ideological views. The 24-hour hotline, launched by the Main Directorate of Intelligence of Ukraine in September 2022, was intended to help Russian soldiers voluntarily surrender themselves or their units to the Ukrainian army. It is now expected to expand to serve North Korean soldiers who want to surrender. A number of experts said that Ukraine can do this because these soldiers are not motivated by ideology or loyalty to Russia. Experts see the North Korean soldiers sent to Ukraine as victims of a cruel deal between the two leaders, Putin and Kim Jong-un. In fact, given this thesis, Ukraine can defeat this new threat without firing a shot by directly addressing the hearts and minds of these soldiers. They have no personal stake in this war and no promise of reward. Unlike Russian mercenaries who may fight for financial gain, these North Koreans receive no remuneration, and their families back home receive no benefit from their mission. In reality, they are seen as soldiers forced into a conflict that offers no purpose or protection. In this context, psychological warfare emerges as the most effective strategy against North Korean troops. These soldiers have no personal motivation to sacrifice their lives in a foreign country. They were sent as part of a backdoor deal, as pawns in Putin's desperate attempt to turn the tide of the war. The key to weakening their morale lies in emphasizing this fact. So, the Ukrainians can reward the North Korean soldiers for surrendering. To communicate both the rewards and the opportunities, the Ukrainians could place loudspeakers near the front lines to broadcast 24/7 Korean, as South Korea has done for years in the DMZ. These broadcasts could emphasize the futility of the mission, the lack of reward, and the fact that Kim Jong-un is profiting from their deployment without offering anything in return. Another strategy could be leafleting with drones. Together with drones, Ukrainians could distribute leaflets that reveal the truth about Kim Jong-un's deal with Putin and the lack of real compensation for the soldiers. The leaflets could also include details about potential safe harbors and surrender instructions, encouraging them to make a choice between survival and freedom. Ukrainians could also leave small radios tuned to Korean broadcasts that can reach these soldiers day and night. These broadcasts could include the voices of former North Korean soldiers sharing their personal experiences of life in South Korea and urging their comrades to seek freedom. Specialized psychological warfare teams could also be deployed, including North Korean defectors who understand the mindset and language of these troops. This approach can be incredibly effective because these defectors know how to communicate messages that resonate with deployed soldiers. To psychologically stabilize defectors after surrender, a project could be undertaken to establish a network of safe houses, food sources, and counseling teams. This project would be critical for immediate security and reassurance to encourage more North Korean soldiers to flee the front lines. And Ukrainian military officials have also made important assessments about how to get North Korean soldiers to give up fighting for Russia. In their view, the greatest weapon against these soldiers is reality. Kim Jong-un's greed and the reality of their situation can break the psychological chains that bind them to a regime that sees them as expendable. Many of these soldiers have never tasted freedom, but when faced with the choice to surrender and have a new life, most North Korean soldiers can choose hope over fear. This choice could significantly reduce North Korean casualty rates at KSK. Moreover, since choosing to surrender would undermine military cooperation between Pyongyang and Moscow, perhaps by refusing to fight, North Korean soldiers could prevent more troops from being sent to the front lines in the future. If not, these realities will hit both Russian President Vladimir Putin and Pyongyang's leader Kim Jong-un hard in the face when the military losses at KSK reach a point where they can no longer be stopped. By then, it may be too late for both leaders. Thank you for watching.